There's a moment that doesn't look like much. No stage. No spotlight. No crowd waiting. Just Don Henley. And a message he knew would hit millions of people harder than any song he ever wrote. His voice, once sharp and steady, now carried something different. Not weakness. Not fear. Just weight. The kind of weight that comes from a lifetime of things said, and a lot more left unsaid. For decades, people knew him as the voice behind some of the most iconic songs in American music. A founding member of Eagles. A man who helped define an entire era. But what most people didn't see was everything behind that voice. The pressure. The fights. The nights that didn't end well. The things he never fully talked about. And now, at 78, he wasn't just walking away quietly. He recorded a final message. Long before the records, before the fame, before anyone outside his hometown had ever heard the name Don Henley, life was simple, and in some ways, already complicated. He grew up in a small part of Texas where nothing moved too fast. The kind of place where people knew each other, where routines didn't change much, and where expectations were pretty clear. You didn't stand out too much. You didn't make noise unless it meant something. As a kid, he wasn't the loud one in the room. Not the type people would point to and say, "That one's going to be famous." If anything, he blended in more than he stood out. But there was something else about him. He watched everything. The way people talked. The way they avoided saying certain things. The quiet tension in conversations that sounded normal on the surface. That kind of awareness doesn't come from nowhere. It builds early. At home, things weren't dramatic in a way outsiders would notice. There were no headlines, no chaos spilling into the streets. But that doesn't mean everything was easy. His father had health problems, serious ones. That changed the atmosphere in the house. It made things feel fragile, even when nobody said it out loud. When you grow up around that, you learn to stay steady. You don't complain much. You don't make things harder for the people already dealing with enough. You keep things inside. And he did. School wasn't where he found himself. It was just something he moved through. The real shift happened when music started to take shape in his life. At first, it wasn't about becoming anything. It wasn't about dreaming of big stages. It was just something that made sense. He started playing, listening, figuring things out piece by piece. Music didn't ask questions. It didn't judge. It didn't expect him to explain himself. It just gave him space. And that space became important, because even back then, there were things building under the surface. Feelings he didn't have words for yet. Frustrations he couldn't fully explain. Music became the place where all of that could go. Not perfectly, not clearly, but enough. Still, if you had looked at him back then, you wouldn't have guessed where this was heading. Nothing about his life looked like the start of something big. It looked ordinary. But sometimes, the quietest beginnings carry the heaviest stories. There's a point where staying feels harder than leaving. For Don Henley, that moment didn't come with a big announcement. No dramatic goodbye. No clear plan laid out in front of him. It was more like a slow realization. This place wasn't enough. Not because it was bad. Not because he didn't care about it. But because something in him kept pushing for more, even when he couldn't explain what more actually meant. He went to college for a while. Tried to follow a path that made sense on paper. The kind of path people around him would understand. But it didn't stick. Sitting in classrooms, listening to lectures, it felt disconnected. Like he was watching someone else's life play out instead of living his own. So eventually, he made a choice that didn't look safe. He left. Not with a guaranteed future. Not with a backup plan waiting if things went wrong. Just a direction. California. At the time, that move didn't come with excitement the way people imagine it now. It wasn't a movie moment. It was uncertain, uncomfortable, and honestly, a little reckless. Money was tight. Work wasn't steady. Some days felt like progress. Others felt like nothing was happening at all. He played wherever he could. Small places. Rooms where people weren't really listening. Nights that ended with more questions than answers. There's a version of this story people like to tell. The one where everything falls into place quickly. That's not what this was. This was waiting. Trying. Failing. starting again, over and over. And in between all that, there were moments that could have easily pushed him to quit. Times where it would have made more sense to go back home, pick something stable, and forget the whole idea. But he didn't. Part of it was stubbornness, part of it was belief, and part of it was that he didn't really know how to turn back anymore. This path, even when it didn't make sense, had already taken hold. Then, slowly, things started to shift. He met people, connections that didn't seem important at first, conversations that felt casual but ended up changing everything later. Nothing dramatic, nothing instant, just small steps that started to add up. And without realizing it at the time, he was getting closer to something that would change his life completely. Not just his career, everything. Nothing about the early days suggested what was coming. Then suddenly, it started moving fast. The group that would become Eagles didn't feel like history in the making at first. It felt like another shot, another attempt to make something work. They were just a few guys playing together, figuring things out as they went. But the sound clicked. Not overnight, but close enough. The songs were simple in a way people understood. Clean, sharp, easy to connect with. And once they started getting attention, it didn't slow down. For Don Henley, this was the moment everything changed. He wasn't just playing music anymore. He was in the middle of something big. Tours started stacking up. Cities blurred together. One night turned into the next without much space in between. Crowds got bigger. Expectations got louder. And with that came pressure. More people watching. More opinions. More at stake. At the center of it, Henley wasn't just another member. He was shaping the direction, helping define the sound, making decisions that carried weight. That kind of role doesn't come quietly. Pulls you in. The success looked clean from the outside. Hit songs, packed shows, money coming in. But inside the group, things weren't always smooth. Creative control became a constant issue. Everyone had ideas. Everyone wanted their voice heard. And when success is on the line, disagreements don't stay small. They grow. Still, the music kept working. Albums sold. Songs climbed. The band became one of the biggest names in the country. But the pace didn't slow. And neither did the strain. Success has a way of hiding problems. At least for a while. From the outside, Eagles looked unstoppable. But inside, things were shifting. Tension didn't arrive all at once. It built slowly. Arguments over songs turned into arguments about control. Differences in style turned into personal conflicts. And one of the most intense dynamics sat between Don Henley and Glenn Frey. They worked well together. That was clear. But that kind of partnership can carry friction. Both strong-minded. Both used to leading. Both unwilling to step back when something mattered. At first, it pushed the music forward. Later, it started pulling everything apart. Touring made it worse. Long stretches on the road. Little rest. Same faces, same pressures. No real break from each other. Small issues didn't stay small in that environment. They turned into something heavier. And then there was everything happening off stage. Late nights that went too far. Habits that became routines. Decisions made in moments that didn't feel important. Until they were. The lifestyle wasn't controlled. It wasn't balanced. And over time, it started to take something out of everyone involved. Henley carried a lot of it quietly. He didn't always react in obvious ways. But that doesn't mean it didn't build up. It did. And once that kind of pressure reaches a certain point, it doesn't just disappear. It forces a break. There are parts of a life people don't like to talk about. For Don Henley, this was one of those periods. Fame had already changed everything. But now, it started bringing consequences that couldn't be ignored. One night, one situation, turned into something bigger than expected. Legal trouble. Public attention. Headlines that didn't focus on music anymore. It wasn't just about what happened, it was about how it looked. And once something like that hits the media, it spreads fast. Details got picked apart. Stories got repeated. Judgment came from people who didn't know him, but felt like they did. For someone already dealing with pressure inside the band, this added another layer. And it wasn't easy to shake. trust started becoming an issue. Who's on your side? Who's watching for the wrong reasons? Who's waiting for another mistake? At the same time, personal relationships weren't holding steady. Fame has a way of complicating everything. Changes how people see you and how you see them. What feels real? What's temporary? That kind of uncertainty wears you down. And instead of talking about it openly, Henley did what he'd always done. He kept it inside. But holding everything in doesn't make it disappear. It just builds pressure. And by this point, there was already more than enough of that. When the dust settled, there was no band to hide behind. No shared decisions. No group identity. Just Don Henley on his own. The breakup of Eagles didn't feel clean. It didn't feel like closure. It felt unfinished, tense, like something that had been forced to stop instead of naturally ending. And now, everything was on him. At first, going solo looked like freedom. He could choose the sound, pick the direction, say what he wanted without arguing it through a room full of people. But that freedom came with something else. Silence. No one to push back. No one to share the pressure. Every decision carried more weight because there was nowhere to pass it. His solo work started gaining attention quickly. Songs connected. People showed up. Critics paid attention in a way that made it clear he didn't need the band to succeed. But success didn't fix what was already there. If anything, it made things clearer. The songs he was writing now felt different. Less about storytelling, more personal, more direct. You could hear frustration in them. You could hear reflection, even anger in some moments. Not loud, not explosive, but controlled. That kind of emotion doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes from things sitting under the surface for a long time. And without the constant movement of a band schedule, there was more time to sit with those thoughts. That's when things start catching up. The past doesn't feel distant anymore. It feels close, immediate. Moments replay. Decisions come back around. Things you pushed aside don't stay buried. There were nights that didn't feel productive. Days where nothing moved forward. Periods where even success didn't feel like enough to quiet everything else. And the people around him, there were fewer of them now. Fewer distractions. Fewer voices. That kind of space can be useful. But it can also be heavy. Because when you're alone with your own thoughts long enough, you start hearing things you ignored before. And not all of it is easy to sit with. Time doesn't make announcements. It doesn't tell you when things are about to change. It just happens. For Don Henley, the shift wasn't sudden. It came gradually. Small signs at first. Less energy after shows. Longer recovery times. Moments where something felt off, but not serious enough to stop everything. At least not yet. Touring continued, but it didn't feel the same. What used to feel routine started taking effort. The physical side of performing, the travel, the late nights, the constant movement, began to wear differently. Not impossible, just harder. And harder in a way that couldn't be ignored forever. There were conversations happening behind the scenes. Doctors, family, people close enough to say things honestly. Nothing dramatic in public. No big announcement explaining every detail. But privately, there was a growing awareness. Things weren't going to stay the same. That realization doesn't hit all at once. It builds. First you adjust. Cut back here. Rest more there. Change the schedule slightly.
But eventually, it becomes clear that adjustments aren't enough.
And that's when it turns into something else. Acceptance. Not the kind that feels peaceful. The kind that feels necessary. Because pushing past it doesn't work the way it used to. And ignoring it only delays what's already happening. For someone who spent decades moving forward without slowing down, that shift is hard to process. Not because of fear exactly, but because it forces a different kind of thinking. What's left to do? What still matters? What hasn't been said yet? Those questions don't come from the outside. They come from inside, when everything else gets quiet.
And once they start, they don't really stop.
That's where he found himself. Not at the peak. Not at the beginning. Somewhere in between, looking back and at the same time trying to figure out how to close things the right way. There isn't a clear moment when someone like Don Henley decides to stop.
It doesn't come with a loud announcement in his own mind. It builds quietly, in pieces.
At first, it showed up in small choices. Turning down certain appearances. Letting others handle things he used to control. Spending more time at home instead of chasing the next date on the calendar.
Nothing dramatic. Just a shift.
People around him noticed it before he said anything out loud. Conversations started changing. Instead of talking about what was next, they started circling around what had already happened. Old stories came back up. Names that hadn't been mentioned in years started showing up again in quiet talks. He didn't avoid those conversations. He leaned into them. There's something that happens when time feels different. You stop rushing through memories and start sitting with them. Some were easy. Moments on stage where everything worked. Songs that came together in a way that felt almost accidental. Times where the connection between him and the audience felt real, not forced. But a lot of it wasn't like that. There were things he hadn't really faced. Words that were never said.
Situations that ended without closure. And now, without the noise of constant work, those things had space.
He didn't try to rewrite them. He didn't try to explain them away. He just let them exist. That's not something he was known for earlier in his life. Back then, the instinct was to move forward. Keep working. Keep producing. Keep going. But at 78, moving forward looked different. It wasn't about adding more. It was about deciding what still mattered. Family became central in a way it hadn't always been. Not because he didn't care before, but because there was finally time to show it. Conversations got longer, quieter, more honest. He wasn't speaking as the frontman of Eagles anymore. He wasn't the guy managing expectations or holding things together behind the scenes. He was just Don, and that difference changed how people spoke to him and how he responded.
At some point, the idea of a final message came up.
Not as a big production, not as something designed to make headlines. It started as a simple thought.
If this really is the end of the road, what do I leave behind?
Not music. That was already out there. Songs don't disappear. This was something else.
Something direct. Something in his own voice, without a melody carrying it. At first, he wasn't sure he wanted to do it. There's a risk in speaking plainly after a lifetime of letting music do the talking. Once you say things clearly, there's no space for interpretation. People hear exactly what you mean. Or at least, that's the idea. But the thought didn't go away. It stayed there. And eventually, it became something he couldn't ignore. So he started preparing, not in a formal way. There was no script written out from start to finish. No team shaping every word. He kept notes, short lines, ideas, fragments of things he wanted to say but hadn't figured out how. Some of it was about gratitude. Some of it wasn't. There were things he knew might surprise people. Things that didn't fit the image they had of him. But at this point, the image didn't matter as much. What mattered was getting it right.
Or at least getting it honest. Recording it wasn't immediate. He delayed it more than once. Sat down, then walked away. Started speaking, then stopped. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because saying it out loud made it real in a way thinking about it didn't. There's a difference between carrying something internally and putting it into words. Once it's said, it exists outside of you. And that changes things. Eventually, though, he came back to it. Sat down again. Same quiet setting. No audience. No distractions. This time, he didn't stop. He spoke slowly. Not trying to rush through it. Not trying to make it perfect. Just trying to make it real. And when he finished, he didn't listen back right away. He just sat there. Because even without hearing it again, he already knew. That was it. When the recording was finally released, it didn't come with much build-up. No major campaign. No countdown. It just appeared. And people found it. At first, it spread quietly. Fans sharing it, sending it to each other, listening more than once to make sure they heard everything. Because what Don Henley said didn't sound like what people expected. His voice wasn't performing. It wasn't polished. It sounded like someone sitting across from you, speaking directly, without trying to impress. He started simply, "Hey, it's Don." A pause followed. Not a long one, but long enough to feel intentional. Then he continued, "I've been thinking about how to say this, and I don't think there's a perfect way." That set the tone. No dramatic language. No attempt to turn it into something bigger than it was. Just honesty. He talked about time first, how it changes things slowly, then all at once. How you don't always notice it happening until you look back and realize how much has already passed. He didn't list achievements. He didn't run through milestones. Instead, he talked about moments. Some of the best parts of my life happened when I wasn't paying attention to the big picture. He let that sit. Then he moved into something more personal. There are things I do differently. Not everything, but some things. He didn't go into details. He didn't name specific events. But the weight behind that line made it clear. He wasn't speaking casually. He was choosing his words carefully. "I wasn't always easy to be around. I know that." Another pause. "And if you were there for that, I hope you understand I was figuring it out as I went. Same as everybody else." That line hit people in a different way. It didn't sound like an excuse. It sounded like someone finally acknowledging something they'd carried for a long time. He thanked the fans, but even that sounded different. "Thanks for listening all these years." Not just to the songs, but to everything in between. He didn't rush through it. Every sentence felt like it had space around it. Then, toward the end, his tone shifted slightly. Not heavier, just more direct. "I'm not disappearing. I'm just stepping back." Another pause. At some point, you realize, you don't need to keep proving anything. There was a softness in the way he said it. Not tired, just settled. And then came the part that stayed with people the most. "If any of this meant something to you, then it meant something to me too." No big finish. No dramatic goodbye. Just that. The recording ended shortly after. And for a few seconds, there was nothing. No music fading out. No voice returning. Just silence. That silence became part of the message. People replayed it. Not because they missed something, but because they wanted to sit with it again. Reactions came in waves. Some people focused on the honesty, others on the tone. A lot of them on what wasn't said just as much as what was. It didn't feel like a farewell built for headlines. It felt like something personal that happened to be shared publicly. And that's why it stayed with people. Because it didn't try to be perfect. It just felt real. So what do you think about Don Henley's final message? Let us know in the comments below. If this video stayed with you, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. We dig into the real lives behind the legends. No noise, no filters. Just the truth you don't usually hear. Until next time, take care.